There is an opinion that the United States and Russia are separated by several thousand kilometers. In fact, we are much closer to each other than it may seem. In the middle of the Bering Strait are the Diamond Islands, with Ratmanov Island belonging to Russia and its sibling, Krusenstern Island, belonging to the Americans. The distance between them is only about 4 kilometers and 21 hours of time difference. And today you will find out why it will take a whole day to overcome such a small distance, what is in Ice Curtain, and how did whole families split up and how the locals live today. The Eskimos began to settle the Diamond Islands over 3,000 years ago. The honor of discovering these places for the inhabitants of the Old World belongs to the renowned Russian explorer Semyon Dezhnev. In 1648, he discovered the strait between Asia and America, later named after Bering. In addition, Dezhnev clearly described the two islands located there. One of them was found by Vitus Bering's expedition in 1728, and both islands were mapped a little later, in 1732. They received their modern Russian names in the early 19th century, thanks to Lieutenant Otto Kotzebue of the Russian Imperial Navy. In 1862, Alexander II sold Alaska to the Americans, as it was believed at that time that these lands were of little use, and a lot of money was spent on their maintenance, and Dexter Gold would not hurt either. From the deal, the United States got a mere pittance, $7 and $2 million. For comparison, a single 3-story building in the center of New York City, built in 1872 and known as the Tweed Courthouse, cost the New York State Treasury almost twice as much as the entire US government for Alaska. At the same time, its area is slightly smaller than the territory of Libya, which ranks 16 among the largest countries by area. After the sale of Alaska, the state border began to pass between the Diamond Islands, but initially these changes did not greatly concern the locals. The inhabitants of the Bering Strait area always considered themselves as one people. Until 1984, families living on different islands visited each other without any problems. After the Second World War, relations between the USSR and the United States deteriorated, leading to the closure of the border. As often happens in such cases, ordinary people suffered greatly because of politics. The Ratmanov Island became home to the military, and the civilian population had to move to neighboring villages on the coast of Chukotka or even to Siberia. Naturally, the consent of the locals was of no interest to those in power. As a result, the border became known as the Ice Curtain, by analogy with the Iron Curtain, a term popularized by Churchill and marking the beginning of the Cold War. But years passed and the so-called Ice Curtain began to gradually thaw. Also, the Diamond Islands became famous for defections during the Cold War. People fled from the United States to the USSR by crossing the Bering Strait, and a similar situation occurred from the Soviet side. Most criminals attempted to leave the country. The reason was that there were no extradition agreements between the two countries. In fact, there is not one to this day. On August 7, 1987, American swimmer Lynn Cox, who had previously swum the English Channel, the Strait of Magellan, and circumnavigated Cape Horn, crossed the distance from an American island to an island belonging to the USSR. The water temperature at the time of her swim was only 4-6 degrees Celsius.
A little bit cold right now, but very glad to be here.
The brave athlete was accompanied by Alaskan residents on kayaks. She completed this journey in 2 hours and was congratulated by the presidents of both countries, Mikhail Gorbachev and Ronald Reagan. Lynn Cox is often called a symbol of the end of the Cold War. In 1989, the countries signed an agreement on mutual trips for residents of the Bering Strait area, but the Ice Curtain finally fell only in 2015, when the United States completed all formalities. According to this agreement, the indigenous peoples of Alaska could visit relatives in the Chukotka region and vice versa. To go on a trip, one needed to receive an invitation from relatives in the established region. Staying as a guest was allowed for no more than 90 days, but currently crossing the border is prohibited again. As mentioned earlier, the Diamond Islands are separated by a truly ridiculous distance, about 3,750 meters. But if you want to feel like a time traveler, overcoming them is an excellent way to do it. The islands are divided by the international date line and are in different time zones. The time difference is 21 hours, and since Russians are ahead of the Americans, Ratmanov Island is sometimes called Tomorrow Island, while Krusenstern Island is called Yesterday Island. This curious fact became widely known to international viewers in March 2021, when one TikTok blogger posted a video explaining how one can quickly walk from Russia to the USA. However, he slightly exaggerated, as the solid ice that used to form between the islands due to climate change is no longer present. He also mentioned the time difference. The post went viral, gathering millions of views, after which many media outlets wrote about it. It was a real eye-opener for Americans. The unique feature of the islands allows for imaginative possibilities. For example, one could celebrate their birthday twice a year, or first celebrate New Year's on Ratmanov Island and then go back in time to celebrate again on Krusenstern Island. It's just a pity that moving between them is not so easy. Currently, there is no permanent population on Ratmanov Island, only military personnel. The first border guard detachment arrived here in 1941. A 6-room wooden house, warehouse and bathhouse were brought by ship from Vladivostok along with provisions, clothing and weapons. Life in these parts is harsh. Winter lasts for 9 months, enduring not only very low temperatures, but also strong winds. Additionally, the island is shrouded in dense fog for 300 days a year, making helicopters rare visitors. They only arrive once every 2 to 4 months to deliver food and mail. Only military personnel serve in that part, and they have the basic amenities of civilization: television, telephone, and so on. On Krusenstern Island, or as Americans call it, Little Diamid Island, there are no military personnel. There is only one settlement here, also called Diamid. When you see this settlement from above, it feels like one of the most secluded places on the planet. A modest-sized Eskimo community of just over 100 people lives here. Today there are about 30 buildings on the island, including residential houses, mostly built in the 1970s and 1980s. Despite its modest appearance, the settlement has a laundry room, a medical office located on the upper floor of the same building, a school with a view of the Russian island from its classroom, a library, a helicopter pad, and a satellite dish for television, telephone, fax, and internet access. The store supplies on the island are limited to a small amount of food, beverages, clothing, firearms, ammunition, and fuel. Anything that cannot be bought in the local store needs to be ordered by mail from Anchorage, which does not happen so often in the winter. As in many other Alaska Native settlements, the import and sale of alcohol are prohibited. Electricity is provided by a diesel generator, and water for winter use is taken from a mountain spring, then treated and stored in a large reservoir. Due to permafrost, laying underground pipelines is difficult, so residents must manually transport water. Employment on the island is mainly limited to the settlement, postal service, school, and medical office. Despite high food prices, Eskimos, who are already accustomed to the concept of purchasing, are not so heavily dependent on hunting and gathering. Some still collect eggs of kittiwakes, seabirds widely found in the northern hemisphere. They hunt walruses, make souvenirs, which are popular on the mainland of Alaska. The average annual income on the island is about $45,000, which is not much due to high prices and the islanders' dependence on imported food. In general, life on the island is not only difficult but also expensive. Recently, Eskimos themselves have been contributing to climate change. With each passing year, it gets warmer, affecting their traditional way of life. Islanders, especially the youth, have slowly begun to consider relocation. Despite this, travelers note that locals seem happier than many residents of big cities. Plans have been in development for some time to straighten ties between the people on both sides of the border. In particular, there have been discussions about building a tunnel under the Bering Strait, or a bridge. However, the construction of such a project is estimated to be very costly and not profitable. And in addition, due to the worsening relations between the United States and Russia, the fate of such projects remains highly uncertain.